Welcome back to Epic Agents, the best in real estate podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Ham. And in this episode, I'm sitting down with Mike Feehley. He's a broker with Ivester Jackson Distinctive Properties, Lake Norman, a Christie's affiliate. Mike, thanks for joining the podcast.
Yeah, of course, Jeff. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Great to have you. We've been acquainted for quite some time now, and I know that Ivester Jackson works heavily within the luxury segment of the real estate market here in the Lake Norman and Charlotte areas, and other markets as well. So you've listed some magnificent homes, and I was really excited to get you on the podcast to share a little bit of your journey and a little bit of your experience and maybe some advice for new brokers as well. So, Mike, before we dive into your work now, share for the listeners a little bit of your background, hometown, career, and we'll talk about what led you to a real estate career.
Sounds good. My path's probably a little bit different, and my current path is probably a little different than most people in the industry. So I'm originally from Erie, Pennsylvania. I moved down here in 2001. And what brought me down here was I was working as a paramedic in Pennsylvania. I was a volunteer firefighter, and I was looking for a firefighting job in the East Coast. I wanted to work with a bigger city, a bigger department. A couple guys I was working with said, "Hey, we're going to go down to Charlotte and take the police test. Do you want to ride down with us?" I said, "Sure, I'll do that." When they did that, I went and took I went to the local paramedic agency, Medic. I applied there, ended up getting hired. Those guys didn't. I came down here, and in 2001, I moved down here. I got hired as a paramedic. 2004, I got on Charlotte Fire Department, which is what ultimately brought me down here, looking for a firefighting job. So 2004, I get on Charlotte Fire Department. Our recruit class is about 6 months. Every fireman, the way our schedules work is we work 24-hour shifts. So we have A, B, and C shift divided a month by 3, so it's essentially 10 days a month, 24 hours. Well, again, every fireman has a second job, and most of them, good blue-collar workers, cutting grass, electricians, plumbers, stuff like that. And I thought, okay, I can certainly go down that track, but I also know what my work ethic is and what I want to achieve, both out of life and financially. And I had a passion for architecture and design, and I thought, you know what, I think I'm just going to go into the real estate business. So shortly after recruit school, I went into to real estate school, got my license, and then just jumped head in to the real estate world. And I have worked parallel, both firefighter. Now I'm a chief on Charlotte Fire Department, and work for Ivester Jackson full time, and I've done that for the last 20 years.
So what year was it that you got your license?
2005.
Okay, so right about the same time that you joined Charlotte Fire Department. So yeah, going on 20 years in real estate too.
It's crazy how fast this went.
You've seen some ups and downs. It's been a roller coaster during your career for sure. Who did you start with, Ivester Jackson, or were you with another brokerage when you started?
No, I think with most agents, I slowly progressed, found my way through a couple different companies. When I first started, I was working for Urban Realty. They're no longer around. A couple of the BICs and owners of that are still around in the local market, but the Urban Realty, we focused pretty much in South End, which is nothing what South End Charlotte is today. It was just quite diverse, and it was just up and coming, and regentrification was just happening. So I started out there, and then, made a couple transitions, and then just worked my way over the years. As my comfort level and experience built, and I built that confidence, I think you just work your way up into different firms where you're able to maybe grasp a little more, take on a little bit more, and just through that confidence, go out and get those bigger listings. I know we're going to get into there, but that's, that was my natural progression in that, how that happened.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. I don't think that a newly licensed broker would be a great fit jumping into the luxury niche unless they were working with very closely with a mentor in that space.
That's right. I agreed.
And every real estate transaction is very important and details are critical. But when you get up into the above $1 to $3 million range, there are just a lot of other things to consider. And I know that marketing plays a big part too. So
you're right. Every home deserves a certain level of marketing for sure. And I don't think that, just because a lower price point doesn't half-ass service by any means or half-ass marketing. But when you go up and you're hitting this, your buyer pool is obviously shrinking, and the higher you go in price point, it's shrinking more and more and more. So how do you get the massive mega outreach? Everybody's going to be on Zillow and Realtor.com. But when you're talking about a trophy property, you're talking about this property that the buyer pool is so small, you need to go out to their markets as well. And how do you infiltrate into their markets so that their eyeballs are getting on it? They're not on Zillow every day, just like the normal home buyer is. They're looking at different advertising brochures or different magazines or different websites than the average homeowner is. So it's making sure that your marketing is tailored to ensure that you're going to reach those people.
There was a listing on the north end of Lake Norman, and for listeners who aren't aware, we're both based in the same area, Lake Norman area, which is the Charlotte metropolitan area, suburb north of Charlotte. There's a listing a few years ago. I'm not going to mention the broker's name or the owner of the property, who actually was a celebrity, is actually a celebrity who purchased the property. But I remember reading an article, an interview. One of the local publications had interviewed the broker, and the broker had mentioned that upon listing the property, they had invested about $20,000 in marketing, and he was prepared to go another 20,000 in a short amount of time. It just happened that that particular listing, the right buyer was in town, and he didn't have to go that far. It sold pretty quick, but that was pretty shocking to me that it's a huge investment and it's a tremendous risk really for the broker.
No, you're exactly right. And that's what, again, time in the profession and building up that confidence that gives you the ability to pull that trigger. To your point, it's all risk reward. We're going to list a lot up front, but I think having the confidence behind that, or the marketing skills or the marketing direction, if you will, to ensure that you think that you're going to have the success of selling it, then it makes sense, because nobody wants to put out $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 on marketing a property. But if you have a 2.5% or 3% commission at the end of the day on that $10, $15 million sale, then yeah, risk reward, you go after it and you make sure that that client's taken care of.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just kind of puts things into perspective for brokers who might be working more in the, under $1 million range, generally speaking, that at least it was eye opening for me to hear those marketing numbers from, in the luxury segment. So, and I'm sure that there are brokers listening that will be listening to this podcast that will say, oh, I've spent a lot more than that, or I've
Oh, I'm
invested a
sure
lot
there,
more than that.
and I'm sure there are, and we talked about it. It's always comical because here in our market, I mean, we didn't start to hit. I mean, we would have that $2 and $3 million house every once in a while. Now that's becoming a norm, but still that $5+ million, that's still pretty rare. We're getting them more and more. But if we were to go up Chicago or go out west or, different other places up north, that's commonplace for them. So, but it's all relative. I mean, that's their normal. That's outside our norm. But as Charlotte continues to grow, we're seeing more and more of that. So yes, and I think that the higher those price points go, the higher the marketing budgets will go. So they're already there, but we're getting there. It's just a slow progression.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that listing that I just mentioned was around 7 million or 7 to 8 million in 2020 when it sold. And it's back on the market recently for, I think, 12.9 or 12, right around 12. So 4 years later, yeah, it's definitely, it's been a vertical kind of experience here in the Charlotte area the last few years.
Yeah, no, it has. And I think that there's a lot of talk about that listing too. And, what justifies a price increase like that over 4 years? Obviously we've had appreciation in the market at a pretty substantial rate, but that much, I don't know. Do you get to buy the fact that so-and-so owned that house and live in that house? How much value do you put to that? The agent's very good in what they do in marketing that house, and the comps are likely justifiable. But there's always that discussion on what attributes to such a price increase in 4 years or 5 years or whatever it's been.
It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see for sure.
It will
There's
be.
been some
I
other.
hope,
Go ahead.
I hope them the best of luck. I mean, it's a beautiful house, amazing views. It's one of the best listings, if not the best listing out there. But time will tell. Do we have are we the market that can justify that price point? We'll see.
It's a very good point. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's you got to have a buyer, right? It's got to take the right buyer for
That's right.
sure.
Yeah.
Mike, for listeners who might be newly licensed agents or brokers who are, early in their career, early in their journey, I wonder if you could look back on your 20 years in the real estate industry as a real estate broker and a professional. What are some lessons that you may have learned that kind of stand out over the last 20 years?
There's several different answers to this question that I think come to the top of my head. One is continuing to educate yourself. I think you get into real estate, you have a couple good sales, you say, "Oh, this is fantastic. This is just going to continue to happen and happen and happen." But it doesn't. I promise you, it doesn't. Real estate market is so cyclical. It comes and it goes, and you're on the greatest high, and then all of a sudden it just dries up overnight, and you're just like, "Where did it go?" But I think it's continuing to stay educated, because especially as you move up in the price point and your buyers come from a different little background or a different financial status, it's going to take the knowledge and the confidence to walk in there and present yourself in the best manner, in the best regard, and as the true professional. So if you're not staying educated throughout day one and working to build and build and build, then your confidence isn't going to keep up with you and where you want to go and where you want to end up on that scale of your average price point. Number two is always stay hungry. It's easy to have several homes in the pipeline and you're already counting those commission dollars coming in next month or the month before, and it starts to get lazy and easy, and you're already counting those dollars. But next month comes and you go to the closing table, but you have nothing lined up after that because you got confident in what you were closing and you forgot to look past that. So you have to stay hungry. And I just asked this to a really good friend of mine who's a broker, and I have so much respect for her and I love her drive. And we were talking today, and I said, what is your why? And she said, what do you mean? And I said, why are you hustling every single day? Like, why do you do this? And she's forfeiting a lot for the betterment of her family, but everybody's why is a little bit different. We love to travel. That, as a family, we love to travel. We want to see every aspect of the world, every part of the world. So I want to make sure that we continue that up, but you have to have a reason, because there's days that just suck and you're going to get kicked in the teeth by your buyers or by your sellers, by the market, by things that are out of your control. And you're going to have to get up the next day and go out there and be hungry and want it. So, I guess I'm just saying, stay hungry, stay in front of the market, educate yourself. And those are the things, and surround yourself by better people, better agents, people that intimidate you, because that's the only way you're going to get better. And I look at that as the firm too. And I think maybe I'm going off a little bit, but when you get out of real estate school and you're getting into real estate, the practice in general, you're going to have a lot of people trying to bring you on. And a lot of those firms are going to be quantity over quality. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Everybody's got their own fit and where they want to be. And a lot of those bigger companies have great training programs. So get in it, take all you can. But me personally, I wanted a company that was truly quality over quantity. I mean, we're about 200 agents big. We have 3 offices or 4 offices now. And it's slow, it's organic growth. I didn't want to be just a number. I wanted to take value in the company that I work for, the people that I surround myself with, and just so I can continue to build and be a better agent and a better individual, in the whole cycle of the real estate process.
Well, I totally agree with the idea or the concept that you put forth about surrounding yourself with people who kind of scare you, who kind of intimidate you, because
Yeah.
they're one of my favorite podcast hosts has been producing a daily business podcast for over 10 years. And he interviews entrepreneurs every day and business leaders and marketers and authors. And he closes a lot of his episodes by saying, or reminding his listeners, that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So it's just kind of easy way of putting into perspective that you really want to surround yourself with people who are better than you and
Yeah.
lift your average up,
Yeah, that's right. I mean, everybody loves that, sense of pride when you had a good closing. You walk in and, going to a nice steakhouse or whatever it is and a bottle of wine doesn't affect you that day and stuff like that. And that's good. It's a good feeling. But what's after that? So I think I'd rather be the last out of those five, trying to push myself to be in the middle of that pack or in the front of that pack. And then if I run through that pack, great, then I'll find another pack. But just staying within that circle, those five people, and feeding off them and learning from them, and never having an ego that, is so big that you're not going to learn something from somebody else, because that's just that, that's a killer for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that. What about specifically brokers who may aspire to working in the luxury niche? It took you several years, no doubt, before you had the knowledge and the confidence to work with the higher end luxury type home buyer. What are some things that you learned during that process that you would advise new agents to consider if they want to pursue that path?
Yep. Take your time. You'll get there, but it's not going to happen overnight. And align yourself with an agent or agents that need the help. Go in and sacrifice your Saturdays and Sundays. Hey, can I do an open house for you? What can I do for you? Can I do this? Can I do that? Don't, we talked about ego a second ago. If somebody says, hey, you want to help me with this listing, I'll give you 20%. I deserve more than 20%. Well, you've never sold a $2 million house. So the knowledge you're going to build is far more valuable than that 20%. So don't get pissed off. I think I deserve more. Well, look at the knowledge you're going to take out of this. That may put you on a track to get your own $2 million or $3 million or even your first $1 million property, right? And everybody's different. And for me, Jeff, in complete honesty, it was just building up that level of confidence to walk into that house, this, really nice house that just will blow you away, and having the confidence to talk to that seller. And that to me just took time. And again, educating myself, knowing that when I walked in there, these people may be an expert in their field and they're making buku dollars. That doesn't mean they're expert in the real estate industry. So if I go in there knowing that I know their comps, I know their house, I come well prepared, and I know the marketing strategy that I'm going to put in place for them, and I convey that well, that makes me feel so much more confident walking into that, and I think that people can read that. When you walk in and you're insecure, people are going to feel that and read that, and they're, especially at the higher end price point, they've dealt with this. They're running their own companies. They're running their own teams. They can tell that. But once you get that confidence, that's what took me, it's much easier to go in, have a conversation, and then find that common ground with them, break the ice out. A little joke, a little something that you can find that human element where it's not just necessarily a business transaction, which it is, but if you can relate to them on that human component as well, I think you're working your way towards that deal a lot faster and a lot easier.
The experience part of that really makes sense to me, and being able to develop the confidence to walk in to a listing appointment on a $2.5 or $5 million home, and knowing that when you sit down to speak with the homeowners, that you're going to be able to answer the questions that they're going to pose to you, that you're confident in your knowledge and your skills and your experience, that you'll be able to satisfy their questions. Because that would be, there's a lot of the questions when you visit a listing appointment for a $3 million home are probably somewhat different than the questions you'll field on a $300,000 home. So sure. There's a lot of different considerations, and experience matters for sure. How many years would you say you were practicing before you were comfortable and confident working with the 1 or 2 million plus client?
I've been in the business essentially 20 years now, and the thing about it is that 20 years ago, Charlotte didn't even have one or two million listings. So so maybe I'll just say 10 years. I think you really got to get your feet wet and get confident out there. But some of these markets, hell, you're walking into $1 and $2 million. That's your everyday sale. Yeah. So, but for those people, then it's walking into that 10, that 15, that $20 million listing. And when do you build up that confidence?
That's a really good point. If listeners in San Diego are listening to this, they're like, that's a ranch,
Exactly.
That's a 3-bedroom ranch. So,
Sure.
so yeah, yeah, to put it into perspective. So to work specifically broader terms that would, because everything's relative, um, you're getting into working your way into the luxury market with confidence and experience. You can expect to be in the industry for several years, if not a decade, before you have enough experience. Would you say?
Yes, I do. I do. And I
Yeah.
think that, part of that experience too is the other side of it. And is that marketing piece. And I don't want to jump too far off track, but I think to answer that question too, when you're going into this, these people want to see that you've been in publications too, or something. I'm old school when it comes to marketing. I still believe in print advertising heavily. I'm heavy into postcards. I'm heavy into mailers, and then local publications as well. I truly believe that. I think that a lot of these upper end buyers and sellers, they're not going to be on. Maybe they are, but they're scrolling TikTok for the same reasons you and I are, to get a laugh, or something like that, or Facebook or Instagram. But when they go home, they're looking through Luxury Home Magazine. They're looking through different publications. They might be reading the Wall Street Journal and, the mansion section on the back, or whatever it is. It's going to take time to build up your finances to put yourself in those, but you've got to start putting yourself in those publications. I'm not saying you have to run a year subscription or a year commitment to them, but you got to get in though. That way, when A, hopefully they see you in there, but B, when you're going in to talk to them and have your listing presentation, and they say, "What are you going to do for marketing?" Oh, well, I throw a couple things on Facebook. What does that mean? Your friends see it, okay. But
Right.
if you walk in and say, "Hey, here's last month's Luxury Home Magazine. Here's last week's Wall Street Journal on the Mansion Global on the back, and there's two of my listings there," but that again, there is a cost element to that. So it's getting up, putting your name out there, making sure that you're affiliated with the right brand, and not only the right brand, big agency, but the right brand with marketing and advertising as well.
I love to hear that you're heavy into postcards still. I think that that's an underutilized and still a very relevant way of spreading brand awareness and also um, nurturing both past clients and future prospects as well.
And my strategy with postcards is, and what I tell newer agents that come on board, like, find one, two, three neighborhoods that you like, that everything about that neighborhood, and you start and you commit to that neighborhood. I mean, I believe in a 3-year commitment, but if you're not going to hit it monthly for at least a year, then you're wasting your dollars. It has to be consistent. Those people have to go every month, look up, oh, there's Mike's postcard, and then some information that is they find useful. So I'll do, hey, here's a snapshot of your neighborhood. Here's what's listed. Here's what's under contract, and here's sold in the last 30 days. And then I just keep doing it and doing it. And then when I finally get that listing, just listed, just under contract, and then sold, and hopefully we're multiple offers, or hopefully over ask price. But I'm going to make sure that they're getting my monthly mailer that's on auto feed. But then when I get that listing, they're going to get hit 3 more times. And yes, again, there's a cost associated with that. But if I have 7 neighborhoods that I do that to right now. The average price point, and there's 900,000. Well, 2 weeks ago, I got a listing in 2 of those neighborhoods. So there's $2 million I picked up, and that comes from my monthly mailers. That's exactly where those came from. But again, consistency is key. If you're not going to be consistent and you're not willing to commit to 1 to 2 years, then put your money somewhere else.
Yeah, I'm so glad you pointed that out too, that it does take, you can't just send 1 or 2 months worth of marketing and expect big results right away. You might get lucky, but chances are, 99% of the time, you're going to need to be very consistent and persist month after month for, like you said, minimum of a year. And I like that idea, that concept of wrapping your arms around a 3-year commitment.
Yeah.
And also targeting those neighborhoods, farming specific neighborhoods is another topic that came up with another really highly successful local luxury broker like yourself on the podcast. And she even went so far as to say, you know what, if you really want to own a neighborhood, it even helps if you move there. so, so, which not all of us can do, right? But
Yeah. Yeah.
but it just goes to show you how important it is to immerse yourself in that community, in that neighborhood, and stay top of mind, right? Just stay
Right.
top of mind.
Yep. If they have a neighborhood function and it's open to the public, go do it. Offer to
Yeah.
host something in that neighborhood. However you can get, that they're going to see your postcard. So if you can get in front of them, they're having a wine night, donate a case of wine and go over there and just mingle. Then they put a face with the name of the postcard they're getting in the month. So any way that you can stay in front of those people, for sure.
And again, consistency is so key. Just staying up with it, doing it on a consistent basis, um, and then also being mindful of the content that you have in those postcards too, right? The messaging and the content that you provide. Obviously, some messages and some content is better and more useful for the recipient than others.
Yeah, and if you're not good at that, you are likely working for a firm, and if you're not, maybe you should reevaluate your position. But you should have an in-house marketing team. If you're not good at it, it's okay. Not everybody's good at it. I'm not good at it. Hannah in our office, I asked her to design all my postcards, and now I have a branding manager that helps me with my personal brand. And I'll reach out to her and say, "Hey, Mallory, can you help me with this? This postcard or this ad or whatever it is." Find those people, and they're not. If they're in house, it shouldn't cost you anything. You don't have to spend a lot of money too on some of these content creators that can help you develop this stuff as well. And going along with that postcard too, I guess one of my biggest pet peeves is that agents that aren't using top-notch photographers and videographers, why would you not do that? How, until you get, well, even at the luxury market, everybody's buying a house off the internet somehow. They're going to see it, whether it's through your marketing campaign or they see it on Zillow or Realtor. But the first thing they're going to see is your photos. Why in the world would you go in there with your iPhone or your Walmart special camera and load the photos yourself? I'd rather have a professional come in here and do the video. Well, not that, and the pictures. Not that I prefer. I certainly would. I'd call professional, and align yourself with the best people in the industry. And first impressions are the most important. So if you're not putting that house out there looking its absolute best, then you're failing from step one.
And not to mention, you're creating a reputation for someone who is a little less quality, in within your marketing, who puts out low quality marketing, and you certainly don't want to do that. So,
No,
um,
right. I mean, how in the hell do you go into your next listing appointment and you show them your pictures or your listing, and they're looking through and they know damn well that was taken on your iPhone or your Android 2 days ago, So like
right.
how again, going back to that confidence, how could you go in there and present yourself and try to present yourself in the best light, and that's what you're going to show them? It just doesn't add up.
Yeah, details matter. Definitely get some support, and that brings up the last point that you kind of alluded to it too. That we can't do all of this ourselves, So as you mentioned, align yourself with uh, some graphic design talent or someone who can help you with your branding. And as you mentioned, a lot of brokerages have this support in house. And if
Yep.
you're new to the industry, that might be one of the questions that you ask when you're interviewing. What types of support does the brokerage provide a new agent?
Yeah, what type of support? And then ask them to look at their materials. Is it
Mm-hmm.
quality looking materials? Is it just, they're going to give you some flyers on cheap everyday printer paper, or are they making you actual nice looking flyers that you can hand out or brochures that you can hand out? And who do they align themselves with? And then also for new agents too, like the paperwork is complicated. It's difficult. You can hire a transaction coordinator. Transaction coordinators have popped up everywhere. You can hire a really good transaction coordinator and pay them when the closing happens. So you're not coming out of pocket up front to pay for them, but you can work alongside them and even say, "Hey, I'm new into the industry. I want to hire you to handle my paperwork, but can you teach me or can you help me along the way?" Any transaction coordinator worth their weight will absolutely help you and assist you, because they want to also build that long-term relationship. But have them do your paperwork. I don't like doing paperwork, but I want to make sure I'm on track, so I have a transaction coordinator. Again, it's not a huge cost, and you pay them when a deal closes, but it just runs so much smoother, and they keep you on. Make sure you're punctual with your due diligence dates and your closing dates and all this. It's just another tool for the toolbox that I think is really helpful to agents at all levels.
That is really helpful. Yeah, I love that point too, because I've also noticed an increase in that segment of the real estate profession. There are a lot of uh, finger quote freelance transaction coordinators, and even within brokerages, there are employees or agents who or that's all they do are transaction coordination, and I love that because would much rather, especially as a newly licensed agent, would much rather have someone who has a lot more experience with the paperwork. Let's face it, that's the least fun part. So,
Yeah, nope, agreed.
Mike, I got to thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedule for joining the podcast. I really appreciate it. When I thought of the concept of this podcast, I had a handful of local brokers who I'm acquainted with in mind, and some who I don't even know who have been kind enough to join the podcast to help me launch it. And but who I knew through reputation, and yours was one of the first names I thought of. So I really appreciate you doing this, and this conversation has been great, and I know it's going to bring some value to some newly licensed brokers who are listening.
Yeah, hopefully so. And again, I told you from day one that I met you, I'd love to help you out any way I can. I love seeing everything that you're doing. You've taken, this big approach, and you're doing a whole bunch of stuff, and it's all quality stuff. So thanks for everything you're doing, and I sincerely appreciate the invite. It means a lot.
Absolutely. Before we close, how can listeners learn more about you and Ivester Jackson?
You go to my website, mikefeehley.com. I keep it pretty much everything simple. Mike Feehley on Instagram, and then you can just go. Heck, if you just Google Mike Feehley on any of my profiles, you see my email address, mikefeehley@ivesterjackson.com, my phone number. And when I say that I'm an open book, that's truly like, it does me no good to hold information in. There's enough for everybody to go for it to go around to everybody. And I would be glad to help anybody out any way I can. So if there's anything I can do for anybody listening, feel free to reach out, text me, email me, call me, and I will do anything I can for you and help ensure your success.
I know that from personal experience too, and that's the truth. I really appreciate that, Mike. I'll have links and all that information in the description for this podcast episode and the show notes. And again, thanks so much. Mike Feehley, broker with Ivester Jackson Distinctive Properties, Lake Norman, a Christie's affiliate. Mike, thanks again for joining the podcast.
Absolutely, Jeff. Thank you, buddy.